It's time for the show that comes at you hotter than a 90-mile-per-hour fastball. Welcome to Blazzzin Sportscast, your source for all things sports news, fantasy football, and trading cards. Now, here are your hosts, Mike Blazzzin Belliot and the Bearded Grinch.
All right, for the record, this is 3 weeks in a row. Let's see how high we can get that number. Chris, how you doing today?
I'm fantastic. It's a great Friday. Looking forward to week 2 preseason football underway. I just wish the weather would turn a little bit. I don't know how it is there in PA. Here in North Carolina, it's still like 95 degrees, and it just doesn't quite feel like football weather. So I'm ready for some fall, winds to come in and put on my hoodies and get ready and down to it. So
it's better than heat and torrential downpours like we've had. We have flash flooding and tornado watches and stuff in Pennsylvania. That's not super common this time of year. So I'm ready for the fall too. I think I'm there. I actually just put a 6-pack of pumpkin beer in my fridge today. So that's not for now. That's for getting ready for the football season. Okay. So
we'll diverge really quickly. What is your favorite pumpkin beer?
Honestly, for pumpkin, I have to say it's you're putting me Southern Tier. Pumpkin, yes.
That's the best. That's
mine. Look at that.
Yes.
See, we're good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like the Nitro too. The Nitro is good, but not as good. But the Pumpkin is just where it's at.
I'm a pumpkin. Speaking of king, we're going to jump right in. We've got some news. Last week, first week of full swing preseason football. And, we may see some new kings at quarterback here. The rookie class came out and had some things to prove, possibly new kings in the NFC North. Justin Fields coming out hot. What did you think about his performance?
I mean, it's 2 touchdowns. It's not like it's one long bomb, but which we'll talk about in a minute. But, yeah, I mean, I think Andy Dalton's doing everything he can to hold on the reins. He was interviewed this week. He's like, look, it's not that I'm not excited for him, but I can't worry about that stuff. He'll have his time. Right now it's my time. It's my team. And they went and they kind of compared it back when Kurt Warner was signed by the Giants, and then they drafted Eli, and the same kind of thing was going on. It's interesting. I think the Bears are going to hold true and let Dalton start. I think we're going to have an Eli Manning exit like when Daniel Jones came in, where they're going to let him go. Oh, if he goes 0-1, he might get pulled. If he goes 0-2, definitely. But, yeah. I mean, I think they're going to let him ride. I mean, let Justin Fields sit back there and sweat it out and work his tail off to earn it. But I think as far as it pertains to the card market, it is awesome, man. It propelled Fields up into Lawrence level as far as value goes, or he started to compete with the values of Lawrence. And Lawrence, on that note, Lawrence didn't do a ton to really impress. Not that he's bad, but they're still talking Minshew as a potential competitor for that starting spot. Are you buying that at all?
They've said open competition. I think, they allowing Lawrence to come out and open the game kind of spoke volumes as to who they're leaning towards on that. But to your point, it's so interesting how we look at, in the way that the card market has changed and the manipulation of values and cards as, one game performance can do that. To your point, Justin Fields kind of, narrow the gap on the pricing from where Lawrence was. The other guy that did it, if you go out west in the San Francisco 49ers, Trey Lance throwing one long bomb. It's all that anybody could talk about. Completed a huge pass for a touchdown. So he's putting the pressure on Garoppolo out there. You don't hear quite as much about pedestrian performances from someone like a Mac Jones and Zach Wilson that, did enough to be serviceable, but really didn't have that splash play. So these guys have those splash plays, and all of a sudden the card market reflects it.
Well, it's funny, too, because we're going to talk about perception versus reality today, but I want to talk a little bit about the ability to kind of prospect, as they call it in baseball, but for the football field, prospect these quarterbacks. Mac Jones, we see the highlight reel and we see the touchdown from Lance. We see the 2 from Fields. What we don't see is Mac Jones' efficiency was great, even though he only averaged 4.5 yards per completion, but he did have a nice long touchdown throw that was dropped in the end zone. If he completes that, are we talking about Mac Jones as much as we are Trey Lance? His cards don't skyrocket, but by watching those games and by seeing those moments, there's where you can take kind of advantage if you're looking to invest in a guy. I mean, it's leaning more and more that Mac Jones is going to be have the same situation as Lance. All those quarterbacks have to do is mess up, and Mac Jones is going to get in possibly even faster than Lance. I think Garoppolo is a much more serviceable quarterback than Cam Newton is in New England. Yeah. So why not Mac Jones over Lance?
Well, and the interesting thing is you talk about like the quarterback competition. You look at a Trevor Lawrence and a Minshew, their games reflect each other a little bit closer than you have such stark contrasts in New England where you've got, Cam Newton playing his variety of quarterback versus a Mac Jones, who's more that prolific pocket passer. Same thing when you look at Garoppolo and Trey Lance. Trey Lance is a little bit more mobile. And then you go up into, Chicago, and the difference is even greater there when you look at the way that a Justin Fields plays versus the classic pocket presence of an Andy Dalton. So, really going to be interested to see because whoever gets the nod and whoever ends up finishing out the season, that's going to be the direction of that franchise. And you've seen it with teams like a Baltimore, like in Arizona. You've got to, match your player personnel to the quarterback and which direction they're going to head. It's going to be an interesting, the card market's going to be reflecting. We're going to see it kind of like the stocks. We talk about it all the time, up and down. The one thing that you got to be careful of, and this is going to lend us into our next story that I want to get your opinion on is, when, stocks can be manipulated and things can happen in the card market just as well.
Yeah, and I do want to say on this note, don't wait until Lance throws a preseason touchdown and then overpay for him because you think you're going to have like the next. Do it ahead of time. Do it for Mac Jones. Like, don't do it Lance now. Wait till this next game and see what he does. If you didn't have Lance before, wait until like maybe buy Mac Jones now. Then he comes out and he throws 2 touchdowns. There's your quick flip. Don't wait too long. And I would say also we've seen this with eBay and stuff, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But buy it a couple days in advance and make sure it's shipped before the game. Because if you buy it before the game or during the game, those guys generally cancel those sales if they know they can get more. Do I agree with the process? No, but it is allowed. It's within eBay's allowance of canceling an auction or a bid or whatever. So do that if you're really trying to prospect or have a little bit of foresight. Do it in advance. Make sure it's shipped before the game. I would say Mac Jones is my prediction this week going in the preseason game that he's going to be this week's Trey Lance in preseason. And I want really one more quick note on the preseason is you don't get this kind of speculation once the season starts. It's a lot harder. There's a lot more people seeing the field. You're going to see 3 quarterbacks. You're going to see 6, 7 wide receivers. You're going to see 3 or 4 tight ends. Once the season starts, it's a lot harder to prospect. So do it now, get ahead of it, because once the season starts, prices start to lock a little bit tighter.
Yeah, the swings are much greater in the preseason, to your point. There's so much buildup and hype around these players that once they get out there and all it takes is that one splash play to see these major swings up and down, and people start to panic buy. To your point, instead of taking their time, that they'll either panic buy or panic sell. And so those sort of things can affect the market. So, yeah, to your point, we're talking today perception versus reality. And oftentimes you hear that perception is reality because if you believe something so strongly, it ends up being real to you. And that's no more true than in the card market. And there was huge news that just came out this week from eBay concerning one of their largest, in fact, their largest, over $150 million worth of sales a year with PWCC and what's going on with them. So, Mike, why don't you fill us in a little bit? What's happening there and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm probably not the best person to do it, but I'll just give what everyone already knows because I'm sure you've been inundated with the news as much as anyone. It was like, seriously, the start of the pandemic, like where everybody was talking about it in the car world. PWCC was restricted by eBay. What that means, I don't know, but it sounds like they're completely eliminated from eBay's market for proof of show bidding. Now, we all know this happens. I don't think they're the only ones responsible for it, but there's supposedly concrete evidence that they were doing it. Personally, I've read a lot of different takes on it. I have my own thoughts. I mean, was it happening? Sure, but why just them? I think they had already launched and were continuing to promote their auction site. They were doing more independent stuff on it. I think it was a way to kind of decredit them before they did, more percentage of their business on their own site as opposed to eBay. Business can be cutthroat. I think there was probably a little bit of that. It gave them an opportunity to get eBay to get ahead of it. PWCC said they were blindsided by it. I believe that because I think they would have gotten ahead of it first and kind of promoted their auction site to make eBay look like. So I don't know. We'll find out in the coming weeks if it really was show bidding. There will be legal action in place, and if that's the case, it'll go one way and not both ways. So something to pay attention to. I think the big thing here is that people are kind of keeping a close eye on how it affects comp values, which is going to our first part of our topic today. But for me, maybe Chris, do you want to have anything to say before we jump into it? Because we'll lead that into what we're going to talk about in our perception today.
Yeah, no, I think it's there's going to be more and more facts that come out. There's already been some, supposed or purported emails that have come out directly from higher ups at PWCC, directly asking individuals to shill bid on certain items. Are those real, legit? Are they manufactured? Who knows? We're going to let this kind of play out. But to your point, lends itself really well to our first perception. And a lot of the perception in the marketplace is that comps are the only factor in establishing and creating value for your cards. And I think this is really important for people to kind of, especially those that are new in the hobby, to kind of listen to what we're going to say here and make their own determination about, how they perceive value of their cards. But one of the things when you're getting into the hobby, you want to know what your cards are worth. You want to know how much the cards that you're going to potentially be purchasing are worth. And what do? You go to eBay and you look at the recent sales and you look at the comps, and that's what people tend to use as their barometer for how much a card is worth. Well, if that's your end all be all, there's some potential negatives that can happen there. And this is why I'd say the perception being that comps are the only factor should not be the reality. We just talked about it with PWCC. So number one, shill bidding occurs. Do we wish there was a way to kind of, seek out all the individuals that are doing it? Yes. Is it going to happen? No. For those that aren't familiar with the term shill bidding, what happens is if a card is placed on eBay, someone will have another individual or group bid that card up to a higher value so that it seems that the card has sold for a higher value than it actually may be worth in the open marketplace. And then oftentimes you'll see that those sales aren't paid for or don't go through. And so then you've got a comp to use that's significantly higher than what the value of the card would be on the open market. So that's one thing that factors in. The other thing that factors in is circumstances change continually. So whether the card's being sold through Instagram, on eBay, on Facebook, you never know the circumstance surrounding why that card is being sold. Some people are trying to use money from those proceeds to purchase PC items. Some people are hard down on their luck. Maybe they have gotten hit with unexpected bills and are needing to make a quick flip to get some money in. So they're willing to let some cards go for a lower value than they're actually worth on the open market. Some people will hold tight to the direct comps and will not let a card go for less than what a recent comp is. And if it's one that just happens to be an outlier that's a little too high or a little too low, then it's going to affect the marketplace. So I think there's some things that come into play when we're talking about values and some things to watch out for. What are your thoughts about it?
So a couple of things. I think you're absolutely right. Circumstances play a key factor. And when we see it seasonally, not just in sports seasons, how, sometimes it's weird. Like basketball season has ended and the basketball market is picking up right now. Basketball's hot right now again, at least on the sealed side of things. So why is that? Why is it really good during the season and then cools off in the preseason, but picks up in the postseason? I think understanding those trends help you to see more, like, instead of freaking out, like, oh, I can't sell any of my basketball cards, relax, take out the pandemic, take out that boom, that little stretch of time there and look at the trends. So many people got in during the boom or slightly before. They don't see those natural trend lines, and there are natural trend lines across. So you can't comp in a 2-month phase and say, oh, this card's only worth that. Sure, it is right now. But you also have to comp a longer time thing. So both seasonal sports season and then seasonal summer. People go on vacations. They're getting ready for back to school. They're going back to school is a lot more things. Getting out of the pandemic was a big thing. People started to buy clothes to get back to work. They were paying for more gas. They were doing things. Those things are all going to affect comps and the immediate comp range. And then recent player activity. Obviously, if a guy goes and has 2 touchdowns in the preseason, his comps are going to go up. You can't just use that comp. Of course, the last couple of cards sold like that because you have people that are excited about it. You have to stretch it down. Well, the last one sold for $150. I'm not going below that. Well, that's fine, but you're probably not going to sell it as easy as you would if you comp that one and the 3 below it. And as far as looking at comps being the only factor in determining value, you can't just look at one comp. I think you have to average out comps from many different sources. If you just use eBay, then yeah, you are going to deal with the PCWW factor where, they may have set that tone. Go look and see what some sold for maybe on Facebook Marketplace. Maybe look and see what some sold for on Raz's on some of the bigger Raz sites. You can't just use one. I know eBay is easy to use and it's a centralized focused pricing, but doing that gets us in the position we are now. Now I want to backtrack for a second and talk about how a lot of people are worried, well, were all these cards overvalued because PWCC was shill bidding? they weren't show bidding every card. You can't show bid every card. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't happen. So stop freaking out. Also, 50% of the vintage market on eBay was placed on the eBay by PWCC. For all the people that were, vintage is the way to go, modern's trash, No, this affects the vintage market, in my opinion, more than it does the modern market. When PWCC had 50% of the listings of the vintage market on eBay, that means that those prices were more heavily affected than the modern market. There are so many, because the vintage market has a limited number of those quality cards that are getting bid on. So like the prices are harder to comp. There's not as many. When you go back to, let's just say, and even past the Jordan era, let's go like with some of the Giannis cards. There were so many people selling Giannis cards, both at shows, on eBay. PWCC can't control that just a ton by the sum that the
right.
what they have. So you have to understand that. So know what that may affect. Will it affect value? Possibly. Or will it just give us more of a reality of that, maybe that we have to settle into the actual pricing? I do think it inflated pricing, but I think it did it more for your Jordan rookie cards, your Mantle cards, those big baller cards where people could show bid by $1,000. If you're show bidding by $5, $10, it's not going to affect the price range of a card that much that it's going to break your bank. This whole show bid thing is going on the larger scale. So don't stress as far as it pertains to, I think, even like modern rookie football cards. I don't think it affects that market. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And in fact, the email that was sent out where they were supposedly asking for someone to show bid was on a Joe DiMaggio card. So to your point, a lot more happening in the vintage and also the really high dollar cards. Two things happen. One, when you see cards that like break record sales for $6 million, $4 million, you either have someone with extremely deep pockets, and that happens. I mean, there's billionaires and millionaires out there that are interested in cards, so they're out there, or there's opportunities where those cards have been falsely bid upon or falsely sold in order to inflate maybe a particular auction house, maybe to inflate a particular vendor that supplies cards out to the masses just to drive business, to get their name out there. So, everything can be manipulated. I think to your point, doing your homework is crucial. We talk about it all the time. Is anything that you're going to do, make sure that you're doing your due diligence. Look at comps, don't take the last 1, 2, 3 comps. I go back as far as the last month or so just to see, how the cards are averaging. There may be some highs or maybe some lows. You can peel those out and then just look and try to find like kind of the flat rate of what the market's doing. Use different resources. So to your point, there is eBay, there's Facebook Marketplace, there's 130 Point, which is a website where you can go and see the actual sale price the card sold for. You can go on Card Snoops as well and find out those prices. And then there's tools out there. We are not affiliated or endorsed by in any way, but there's things like the Market Mover app where you can go in and you can really see the actual sales of cards and the trends that they've got. So doing your homework and things like that. I think I agree with you. Don't blow it out of proportion with this whole PWCC thing. I think the amount of people that it's actually going to impact is going to be far fewer than we think it is because there's millions of cards being sold every day. But it's just something to take note of and just be aware of, especially if you're newer trying to get into the hobby.
And to stick to our point here, today's show is perception versus reality. So the perception is, I have to use comps to determine the value of my card, specifically eBay. The reality is there are lots of ways to comp your card outside of eBay. eBay is a great source. I hate when people say don't use eBay. No, use it, but use it with a combination of other things. Also taking into account seasonal trend lines, both yearly seasons and the sports seasons. Look at trends as far as recent player activity, what's made it go up, what really look at all the factors of it. Don't just use comp. Look at the reality of all the things that can affect the prices of a card. Chris, what's our next perception versus reality topic?
Well, I think what we're going to do is kind of follow the trend here. So we talked about the Market Movers app and where that is, kind of sponsored by is specifically, one individual who the sports card investor. And there's been a story lately where he came out on a YouTube channel and he was talking about how the retail production of Select has greatly impacted his $500,000 inventory on cards. And so we want to kind of dive into that. And I know you've got some strong opinions on this. So I'm going to let you kick us off here. What are your thoughts on that story when he comes out and says that the retail, market here on Select is completely just destroying not only his $5,000 investment, but Select as a whole card, component? When
you look at it from above, from a real large scope, I think, yes, it does. But when you start to become like to the trained eye and to understanding the market, I think what it does is it allows us to see the value of certain aspects of a specific set. And what I mean by that is that we continue to see all of this. We continue to see all of this select retail come out. And I think what we need to start to pay attention to here is both how many of those like specific cards are getting graded, how many do we see on eBay, how many do we see on the marketplace. What you have to start to pay attention to that. And this goes back to the fact that I've always supported the idea of collecting, buying, and investing in numbered cards. Most of the time when you look at retail, they don't provide numbered cards. When they do, they are very few and far between. What Panini has done with this retail side, and I'm not going to speak too much about Topps on this as his post was all about Panini, is that they've inserted these really super short print parallels like the zebra print die cuts in Select, which are awesome cards. Don't get me wrong. All the die cuts, all the different parallels, they're awesome looking cards and they're selling for a lot. But is that because the boxes are costing so much or because they truly are short printed? So the perception is that these are super short printed and they're super valuable. The reality may be is that these are just not being open as quick because the boxes are so expensive, or they have to sell so much because the boxes are so expensive. When you take that back into the hobby side of things, how does that affect the hobby at all? How does a die cut zebra print that doesn't have a number to it, that may be mass produced, have anything to do with my die cut out of 49 or my parallel out of 10? Because I know the finite number to that. Now, I do know that people are going to perceive it. The perception is, oh, yeah, it affects it across the board. But in reality, it shouldn't. If you're looking at pop counts, if you're looking at the ability to get a unique card, a valuable card based on the demand and the supply, then the number card should always maintain the same value. What are your thoughts on this?
I think you're making really, really strong points, and I agree 100%. One of the things that's really important to do when we start looking at it and you hear a story like that and you make these broad stroke assumptions that, okay, all of a sudden retail Select has come out in the market and now values are going to be trash. Well, retail Select was not available in 2017, 2018, 2019. That in no way, shape, or form affects the value of those cards at all. Those print runs have already been set in place. They're not producing any more of those cards. What's in the market's in the market, whether it be opened up and out there floating, or if it's still in sealed product, you're not going to have any more of it. So the pricing there is not going to affect the product that's already been out. Utilize things like cardboard connection, go through the sets, see what the print runs are, even from particular cards. Like we talk about not knowing real specific numbers on things like a zebra or an elephant or a snakeskin, any of those sort of parallels that they might have out. Look at players. You and I talk about it all the time. Somebody that I PC, like a Lamar Jackson, only signed autographs in 2018 and 2019 product. The value has been set for his stuff. It's only going to grow in value if he continues to play well, because you cannot find a card in 2020 or 2021 product that is autographed by him. So you've got to go down as specific as players and look how many autographs have they signed in a particular product? How many parallels are there? Tom Brady's a perfect example of that. Tom Brady's values, not only is he one of the greatest players ever, just because you're a Bills fan, I won't dub him the GOAT on this cast, but we'll say
he is
the greatest player.
You're welcome. He is. He is the GOAT. I can admit.
Right, but he's got just a handful of autographs per set, and so they're more coveted. So you've got to just do your due diligence. So I think it's really a poor statement for him to make to have that broad stroke that all of a sudden, just because a product comes out in retail, that it's going to squelch values, maybe for that year, maybe in a particular variation or particular parallel, but to make that as a broad statement to me is just false.
And we're not on video, so you can't see how I reacted when Chris brought up the fact of comparing 18, 19, and 20, but he hit the nail on the head. You cannot compare, and that's going to be a whole other topic, but you cannot compare year after year after year. Yes, they are producing more. The demand is higher, right? So that's okay, because the more people that collect, you can produce a little bit more. If they didn't produce more, we'd be paying $300 for a blaster and $3,000 for a hobby box. They're not necessarily just like producing like they were in the 90s, where you walk in the Value City and you see pallets of Diamond Kings baseball for $4.99 a box without any numbered cards in there and any what I call accountability in the hobby. By adding numbered cards into sets, It provides accountability to put a finite number. Now, Panini has gotten better at stretching those things by adding more sets of parallels, by extending those rainbows and doing that, but it still adds some type of accountability, especially as it pertains to the hobby product. But in 18, the amount of product being produced is much less than it was in 19, which is much less than it was in 20, which is clearly much less than it is in 21, not only in volume for each set, but also in number of sets. So you have to pay attention to that. So your 2018 rookies, like your Josh Allen, your Lamars, especially higher grades, they should be worth more than the current quarterbacks because there's going to be a lot more of those cards, those base rookies. Now, I'm not comparing that to numbered. To me, an out of 10 Josh Allen should be as valuable as his equal player in 21 out of 10, whatever the skill level, whatever the popularity is, because they're both numbered to 10 from that same set. But to your point with that sports card investor coming out and saying that, we see this a lot with these social media influencers. We saw it when Vegas Dave came out and said the hobby's going to collapse in 12 to 18 months. Well, we've been about 9 months in. He was right there for a small stretch when the post-pandemic, like everyone released out in the society again, and it looked like, oh no, what's happening with the card market? And then it picked right back up. Right. So as of right now, Vegas Dave did that because he made really bad decisions. He invested in the wrong guys. So what did he do? Bash the market. Gary Vee right now is really big on NFTs. You're not hearing him pump the card market. He's moved on to another investment. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what Gary Vee does. But this sports card investor guy, his thing is that he got burnt on what he thought was going to be a quality $500,000 investment. I don't think he's burned as bad as he thinks he is, but I think he's scared. Anytime you invest that kind of money, $500,000 into something or have $500,000 worth of something, and it's threatened, you get scared. So what do? You try to find a reason to either piss and moan about it or correct it through your influence. And that's what he's doing. And I don't blame the guy. He's a little worried, but don't get like everyone all up in arms and scared that their collection isn't worth anything. You just have to understand that some products are better than other in hobby versus retail, and hobby will always trump retail based on long-term value. At least that's my take on it.
No, I agree 100%. So our perception here is that retail product diminishes value of hobby product, and that is blatantly false. To your point, you look at specific years, print runs, types of cards, variations, look at individual players, the amount of, whether it be, a die cut short print, whether it be an autograph, whether it be a zebra variation, that's going to vary upon player just as much as it is the different variations in the card. So again, go back to it. It's going to probably be the roaming theme for me throughout this is do your homework, do your due diligence, look at things, go on Cardboard Connection, find out what every set has to offer. Retail is not going to kill the hobby. In fact, Panini's doing a smart thing. They want to put the play into, we're going to sell our hobby boxes, but we're not going to be so naive that we're not going to make the retail boxes special to where people are going to go out and we're going to sell out the retail boxes. So you see things in select like basketball where the tiger stripe and the elephant are specific to retail. The zebra stays specific to hobby. An individual that wants to go and do the animal collection, you're going to be buying hobby, you're going to be buying retail, you're going to be buying it all.
Yeah, and I want to just real quick say a little caveat here. I'm not bashing retail because I love, especially when it comes to select, there has been many chances I've had to buy certain select cards. For example, most recently, there was a Gabriel Davis die cut out of select. I think it was a green. I don't necessarily think it was numbered, but the guy was like, the last 3 comps are around $200. I'll do it for $175. And I was like, I can't spend that on our wide receiver for it because it's going on my PC. It's not an investment. But I looked and he wasn't wrong. So like there is a lot of value to be had in the retail side of things. And there wasn't a ton of them out there for sale. So going back to the fact that the comps aren't all that matters. I looked, it wasn't like I could go find some that somebody was offering, anywhere else. They're very hard to find. So there may be something there where because the sets are so big and there's so many parallels, it looks like there's a ton of these blasters out there. It looks like there's a ton of retail, but it doesn't mean that every card in there is mass produced. There may only be such a small number of those die cut of each color. We don't know. And I think that's where Panini needs to start to come out and say, hey, we're going to be more transparent with our print runs so I think by not doing it, they make themselves look bad, but I don't think it's as bad as they would look by actually putting out the print run numbers because I don't think they're as bad as people think they are.
Yep. To your point, too, being transparent. One thing that you don't have to be transparent on a print run is a 1 of 1. And so we talk about the retail market. My local card shop here, the UFC Select Khabib 1/1 Black Disco Auto was pulled out of a retail box. So there you go, retail box producing a $40,000 card. So,
wow,
to your point, there's a time and place for everything. So I think there's enough out there for everybody can kind of do what they need to do based on their own budgeting, what they're after, and just enjoy it. That's
hey, Chris, for the sake of the show, I got to ask you now, was that a retail exclusive, or was that something that could have been in a hobby product as well?
No, I believe that the discos are retail exclusive.
Oh, okay. It was a 1/1 disco, which is a retail exclusive, or whatever it is, the fast break or whatever.
Yeah, the black disco exclusive 1/1.
Okay.
So
right,
just
cool.
a killer card. So really good. So that was point number 2. Retail does not kill the hobby market. Moving into point number 3, this one is really kind of near and dear to me because, I've kind of clung to some of the new players in the game here, but grading is always the answer. So on any forum you go to,
now this is a perception. This isn't your truth, right? The perception is
the perception that grading is the only way to go. So you're in a break. The first thing that a lot of breakers say is, "Oh, I got a guy that submits cards, or we submit cards. So let's go ahead and send that off for grading," as if grading is the only answer to continuing to maintain value of a card or for that card. And to me, that perception is not a reality. Now, I will say this: I understand why people grade cards. The market speaks for itself. A PSA 10, a Black Label BGS card, will sell significantly higher than a raw version of that same card. Here's where my problem lies, is right now grading is extremely subjective. So when you look at companies that are using human guides to grade these cards, and I'm not saying artificial intelligence is the only way to go. I think there needs to be a combination of the two. But when you have an individual that is just using the naked eye to view these cards, it's very subjective. Based on what their thought is, they may have sort of guidelines that they need to follow, but there's a lot of gray area in there. That's been proven recently. I've seen several people that have gone online where they've submitted the same card to multiple grading companies and received vastly different grades. So someone taking a PSA and crossing it over to an HGA that utilizes more of the artificial intelligence. I've seen instances where they've seen a higher grade, and I've seen instances where they've seen a lower grade. So to me, just the nature of it being so subjective, until we can really clearly define some guidelines and see the processes. I want to look at companies like SGC did a great job of coming out and saying, this is how we grade our cards. And they put out a video and they showed all behind the scenes. I think we need to see that transparency from these grading companies to see what actually goes into it. The second thing for me is there are times when grading a card can actually hurt the value. I would venture to say that there's a lot of instances out there, unless it's a vintage card or an earlier rookie of someone like a Kobe Bryant or, someone of that nature, where a PSA 7 is actually going to be lower in value than if you were to sell that card raw. And so I think those are two things that kind of dispel that myth of grading is always the answer. But what are your thoughts when it comes to grading?
Well, I mean, you've heard me talk about this a lot. I think that there's so much, just subjectivity in it. I think that, PSA, people love PSA because they hand out 10s and they're also getting commission on it. Why wouldn't they give out 10s? I like HGA just because I collect. And so I'm not generally grading my cards to invest. If I'm getting a graded card to invest, I'm buying it graded. But as far as having to grade every card, I'm more leaning to tell people to stop sending in base cards just until we see what happens with all these ones that are about to get returned. Tens and hundreds of millions of cards from all grading aspects are about to get returned. When the pop counts hit 40K on a graded base card, what can the possible value of that be? No matter how popular the player gets, no matter how popular the card is, if I buy one and there's still 39,999 PSA 10s of that player out, what makes it? Why would I pay more than a certain price for that? It's not like, what am I in the crew of 40,000? It's like I always go back to this. When they started numbering cards back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and you'd get one out of like 15,000, and people are like, "This is a joke." There's 15,000. Or even when I started breaking, people are like, "Why even number a card to 399 and certified? What's the point? Why even number it?" Or 999. Well, then what's the point of buying a graded card that has a pop count, even if it is PSA 10, it has a pop count of 40K? What are you doing? That goes back to the fact that I am under the impression of grading cards that give you a finite pop count. I think there are, and also don't send every one of those in. If you can't look at that and be guaranteed it's a 10, when people post these posts up and they're like, I'm thinking about sending this in for grading, what do you think? Well, it's a little off center. Don't send it in then. And I know they give a leeway, 70-30. I think PSA, it's like ridiculous, the leeway from them. They're 60-40 to some. Some need it to be perfect. But whatever. If you're like, this corner I'm a little worried about, that means don't send it in. Because like Chris just said, the Bearded Grinch told us, if it's a 7 or an 8, you're going to get more for it raw. Let someone else speculate on it. Be transparent when you sell it to them. I'm worried about this corner. There's a scratch on the back. I feel like it's a little off-center. Let them send it in if they're so excited about it. But it's okay to have raw cards. And if you're just slabbing it because you like the slab look, then go to somewhere that you like the slabs. If you're willing to pay the price of PSA because you like their classic look of slabs, do it. For me, HGA is cool. A lot of people think it's too much. It's too flashy. I don't want it in my collection. To me, it's cool. So that's where I'm going to go. But again, not every, grading is not always the answer. You can have raw cards and actually do well with them, especially with the prices that some of these grading services are charging. Even when PSA gets back up and running, you're crazy to think that they're going to grade your card for less than $40. Gone are the days where you can bulk submit for $10 a card. They're gone. They're never coming back. So all of you that think, oh, I can't wait till they bring bulk grading back. Well, that's fine, but it's $40 a card. If you can't do your initial investment on that card, plus $40, plus risk of turnaround time, plus risk of what the market will do when we talked about all these ebbs and flows, then it's probably not worth it. It's not for every card.
Yep, I agree completely. And I think, on the other side of that coin, you also have to look at there are times, and you made good points about this, when it really does make perfect sense to grade a card. So what can make a value of a card, exponentially higher? Let's say, to your point, you've got a die cut to 39. Well, there's one way that you can make that card value higher. Grade it, get a high grade, and then you decrease the pop, value or the pop count significantly, because not only are you dealing with a card that is already by its own nature in design limited print run, then you're making it a low pop card. Yes. So you're kind of double dipping there. Makes perfect sense to do that. I've heard people sometimes that are like, all right, do you grade a 1-of-1 card? Do you not grade a 1-of-1 card? For me personally, unless, to your point, I knew it was going to get a 10, I don't think that I would. But what we're starting to see, and I think you made a great point with this, is there's companies that are charging just to slab the card, right? So HGA has a service now for $15. You can send them any card. They won't grade it. They'll just slab it, and they'll put a nice label on top of it. And then you can have that for your collection if you're looking to just protect it, if you don't want it just sitting there in a top loader. But I think, you've got to look at what is the reason behind why you're going to grade this card, and does it make sense, right? So I have a long list of cards that are sitting here that I want to potentially send in for grading. And then next to it, I've got a huge box of cards that are all raw, and they're going to stay raw. Some are PC, some aren't, some just don't make sense to grade. To me, grading makes sense when it makes sense. It's not the end all be all.
And I want to say, before I get pounded for being oh, you're wrong, look how these cards do graded. I mean, there are just base rookies. I'm looking at a Josh Allen Silver Prism rookie card, Gem Mint 10, that just sold for $12,100. $12,100. My understanding is that the pop count on that is 10 or less. And I know I'll have to read more about it. And let me get, back to this. Maybe I can comment in the post for this podcast. I want to do a little bit more research. But what I want to say about that is, anybody that's going to say pop counts don't matter, go look at some of the highest selling graded cards. In the description or in the title of those cards, it always gives the pop count of that card. They're excited that they have a low pop count card. No one's selling a Zion base, select rookie and then being PSA 10, pop count only 38,247. Because why? Pop count matters. Or if it didn't, you would tell people that. If your pop count is low, you're bragging about it. If it's not, you're not telling people what the pop count the pop count is. So what I'm saying is that I'm not bashing grading. I think grading is a great way to get a very unique card. The whole point of collecting, to me, is to have a very unique collection, or have a collection that you love the look of, or something about it. If you're buying for investing, it's always supply dictates demand and value. It's just basic economics. It's economics 101. So if you're going to do it for investing, just be picky and choosy is all we're saying. We're not saying this to bash your collection if you grade it. I think what we've always tried to do here is lead you in the right direction without letting you waste your money or waste your time or get frustrated in the hobby. And by no means am I saying I'm right, but I feel like, we've been preaching numbered cards forever. And what do you see the market doing? Really promoting those numbered cards. Oh, no, I'm not really. Jason from Three Kings just told me this week he had, and you'll love this, he had Lamar rated rookie Donruss rookies raw, And, before they would have sold, what were they selling back in, again, when his MVP run and stuff? What was like a Donruss rated rookie Raw selling for?
I mean, a couple $100.
Okay, he offered them both for $30 and the guy didn't want them. So I don't know what their real value is now, but the fact is, in the market, on the main front lines, people aren't necessarily excited. And this could have a lot to do with PSA not accepting a ton of cards, but you have to start to look at that. Is it worth grading? Is that going to be worth grading for $40, even if the value goes up to $120? If I had to pay $15, $20 for the card, another $40 to grade, and the risk of him maybe getting hurt, is it worth a $60 flip unless I'm doing it on a bulk scale? So that's all we're saying, is that we're trying to show you the best things to look at. If you're going to choose a grade, be picky. The whole point of this is perception. Everything needs to be graded. The reality is, no, you need to be picky and choosy on what you're grading, especially while the whole grading market gets sorted out.
I think you hit the nail on the head with that one as well. And the last point that I'll kind of make on that is, if you are into the speculation and you are going to buy cards that are already graded, now this is just me personally, I always stick to those, again, non-base cards, those that are already limited in some capacity, be it a silver or be it a numbered or some sort of variation that I know is going to be limited. And I do tend to buy 10s already. Will 9s creep up in the market? I think you're going to start to see that, but I think it's going to be the 9s of these base cards that are out there because PSA 10s are so plentiful. I think you're going to start to see 9s increase in value, but I don't know that that's going to be the case on some of these more select limited variations of cards. So I always go for the PSA 10 versions of the limited number of cards and stay away from the base stuff. Now, that's just me personally.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that because the pop count of PSA 9s is 100 and the pop count of PSA 10s is 40,000 makes the PSA 9 more valuable. Pop counts matter when it comes to having the PSA 10. Just because there's a shorter pop count of a PSA 6 doesn't make it more valuable. I see people send in these super off-centered bad cut cards and get a PSA 2 on it, and they're like, pop counts of 1. That doesn't matter. That's not what we're saying here. Pop counts on your PSA 10s or your Beckett 10s or whatever do matter.
Yep, I agree. Anything else? One more thing that you want to throw out
just
there?
one quick perception that checklists are. I'll just bash this out real quick because it just so recently with Immaculate this caught my eye. Checklists are not the same for every product. For me, when I price things out PYT wise, I try to go in. If it's not a mixer, if it's a standalone product, i.e., Immaculate Collegiate. I was recently pricing it out, and I had looked at the checklist, and as I was pricing it, I was like, oh my gosh, the Chiefs have nothing in here. They had a Cornell Powell. They had some Patrick Mahomes base and parallels, but no ink, no patches. And I think they had a Tyreek Hill patch. And then I was pricing them and I started looking around and people had the Chiefs super high in their Immaculate cases. I'm like, why? And some part of it's laziness. Some part it was priced before maybe the checklist came out. I don't want to accuse anyone of doing it intentionally because I do think it's just maybe accidental. But the thing is, it happens to everyone. We try to get the prices out as fast as we can, pre-sale breaks, and Panini's not great at getting their checklist out. But I would say do your homework if you're getting in the breaks. I always find it amusing when someone's like, man, I really hope I get a Tom Brady auto in this. And I'm like, well, he's on the Patriots in this and not the Bucs. What? Why is he on that? He plays for the Bucs. Well, that's just the way Panini chose to do this one particular set. It's a tribute set to the Patriots. So what I'm saying is the perception is, hey, Tom Brady's on the Bucs now. All his cards are going to be on the Bucs. No, he might have Patriot autos and might not even have an auto for the Bucs. The reality is every checklist is different. Don't perceive every set to be the same. And I know most people know that, but for a lot of the new collectors, make sure you're doing your homework as much as possible.
Yeah, real easy to just look at the team and say, the superstars that are there and make the assumption that they're going to be in product. It took me a while to realize that, when I was buying into some Ravens stuff and realizing that Lamar's not in the product. And, then it kind of clicked. Same thing, like you said, that they're doing with the Chiefs. People automatically assume you're going to get a Mahomes, or with the Bills, you're automatically going to have Allen available. And those players are actually getting more scarce with their autographs. So, yeah, we talk about it a lot, but just making sure that you're researching and doing all the things necessary on your end. So, there's more things out there when we talk about perception versus reality. I'm interested to see, first of all, I know that people are going to probably disagree with some of the things we said here. I welcome it. I love the conversation. So please, after you listen, go ahead and go on Instagram or the Facebook page and just give us your thoughts. If you disagree with us completely, please let us know. If there's something else that you have out there that you see, is this perception versus reality type conversation to be had, let us know so we can address it on a future show as well. The thing that I'll just leave with is, the saying perception is reality. No, reality is reality. Now everybody's reality may be a little bit different, but I always come back to, and we talked about it with several of the topics here when we're talking about comps, we're talking about grading. Cards are always going to be worth what someone is willing to pay. So take that into consideration with all the things that we've said here. If you own, a PSA 6 of some base Prism card and someone's willing to give you $1,000 for it, well, then take that money and run. So you may find somebody out there. But for the whole, I think the things that you and I were talking about, again, it's just to try to protect the consumer and the collector as best as we can. Not that we know it all, but we've been around the block a time or two and, just have some opinions on it.
Yeah, and kind of to echo your thoughts, Chris and I try to be as straight up as possible in this. We try to share our thoughts. It doesn't mean that we're right by any means. We're going to be wrong a lot. And we never mean to step on anyone's toes. But what we want to hear is from you. If you disagree, you don't have to say F off, come to us and tell us why you disagree, because that's how we learn. Convince us. I love when someone comes at me and says, hey, let me tell you what I thought about this and why I think you're wrong. Good, because if I can be proven wrong, that means I really agree with you, and it could steer me more in the right direction. And on this note of perception isn't reality, reality is reality. I got a hard dose of that this week, Chris. I'll leave you on this. When I perceive myself to still be somewhat of an in shape, decent looking guy for my wife, and my wife goes, man, you're getting really overweight. Man, reality hits hard sometimes, guys. So you accept reality first before someone makes you accept reality on your own. So you don't want to have to get smacked with reality. It's better to realize it on your own and do something about it before your wife tells you the reality and you have to deal with it. So
yeah, I'm going to take off these rose-colored glasses and go eat a celery stick.
All right, guys, thanks for listening. We appreciate you. Share this out. Listen, so many of you are in other groups. We ask that you share this out. We're just here to talk about the market. We're not promoting anything. We're just trying to promote the love of the hobby, give you guys some tips. Please share this out with others. Let people know what we're doing. And if you like the show, rate us on Spotify, rate us on Apple Music, give us a review. Help us to get out there to share our info and our thoughts with the rest of the card world.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys as always. I'm going to throw one last bit out there. If we can get this episode to 200 downloads by the end of the weekend, I'm going to put out a giveaway next week on the next episode. So 200 downloads by the end of the weekend. Get on it.
Chris's giveaways are never crappy giveaways. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, I'm eyeing up some things right here now that I'll probably hate myself for doing. But listen, it's important to us, and we want to get this out to as many people as possible. So thank you all. Have a great weekend, and we will see you next Friday.
See y'all later.